Welcome one and all, it's time for yet another Warhammer the Old World Battle Report. Dwarves versus the filthy Warriors of Chaos. So, the Dwarves are back out on the table. There is a 2,600 point Dwarf related tournament that I'm at this weekend, halfway through that, and this game took place during the week and is a little bit of a warm-up, but this game is only 2,000 points, so it's my tournament list with a few trimmed down elements and then a couple of tweaks that I made for the tournament, which I'll tell you about shortly. So, Warriors of Chaos, I've been more used to playing as them rather than against them lately. So let's see what we've got here. Right, let's start with the Dwarves. Oh, by the way, you can see the cabbage train in full glory there. Dwarves have been down in the cabbage mines foraging and they've brought up this lovely bounty of cabbages. Look at that. Beautiful. So these are from the mine set from Bad Squiddo Games, and then I just green stuff balls painted green as cabbages inside them. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got this blob here with a lot of the cool stuff in it. So let's start with the characters in this list. We have a king on shield bearers with the Master Rune of Adamant for toughness 10 and Rune of Fury for an extra attack with the great weapon. Got Wraith in the chat, good evening. We've got a runesmith with no anti-magic stuff whatsoever. It doesn't feel that necessary because magic hasn't been that impactful against me lately. It feels like spells are very difficult to get off, and the ones that target dwarf units in particular are suffering from lots of magic resistance. So just a runesmith with full plate armor, shield, and a great weapon. Then we have got, who else have we got in this shot? Let's go to this one here. So you can see that we've got the machine gun Thane of Doom with the exploding handgun of Doom, who's also the BSB, and has, obviously the handgun is the Rune of Bursting Flame, Rune of Rapid Fire, and Rune of Accuracy. So you get the two shots, each one does 2d3 hits, and it always hits on 3s. Very snazzy, and also got the Master Rune of Grungni, the Ward Save banner as well. Then we've also got an engineer in this list who is lurking around somewhere with a handgun, and it is the Stupidity gun, and I think he's around here somewhere. Can't spot him, but there is an engineer with a Stupidity gun in this list, and it's the Rune of Accuracy, the Rune of Concussive Force, so it always hits on a 2+ with the engineer, and if you hit, you cause the enemy to become stupid. So, is that worth 108 points, making a single enemy unit stupid on a 2+ each turn? Maybe. Then what else have we got? We've got a little unit of Rangers. This unit of Rangers is significantly larger in the tournament list, but for this game, they've dropped down to, let's see, I think it's 17. There we go. And then we've got 20 Dwarf Warriors and 20 Hammerers. The Warriors, of course, with hand weapon and shield, and they have, let's see, they've got a Rune of Battle on their standard for +1 combat res, and the Rangers have the usual Rune of Courage that I like to put on them so they automatically pass any fear or terror checks they may be caused to make. We've got 2 Gyrocopters in the list. The tournament list has 3, so one of those has come out to trim down to 2,000 points. And there are 2 Naked Doomseekers in the list as well. One of them is over here next to a Gyrocopter. And let's go back to the wide shot a second. So you can see Doomseeker there and Doomseeker there. The Rangers are actually slightly outside the deployment zone, which is why the Thane of Doom isn't in there yet. And you can actually see the Stupidity gun engineer is inside this brick of Dwarf Warriors, along with the King attached to the end. So this unit hasn't been set up correctly yet, but you'll see at some point in the photos I move a couple of these warriors into this rank behind the King there. Against the horrible, vile, disgusting forces of chaos, what have we got? We have a big blob of Forsaken. 14 of them with the Mark of Khorne, so pretty nasty combat block there. Then we've got 20 Chaos Warriors, and they have the Mark of Tzeentch, so they can have a sorcerer in there hanging out with them, who is level 1 with Rod of the Damned and Demonology, so he's always going to just take the Summoning Magic Missile and then get +1 to cast from being in a Tzeentch bunker. Then we've got a Warp Fire Dragon right here, who is level 1 wizard with battle magic, so potentially some spells coming from the Warp Fire Dragon. Then we have got 5 chosen Chaos Knights with lances, Mark of Nurgle, and Icon of Darkness for -1 to shoot them. And we've got the General, who is a Chaos Lord, so Chaos Lord on Dragon. It's not a dead concept, people are still running it. We've got Giovanni in the chat. Good evening. So the Chaos Lord with the Mark of Nurgle and a, let's see, I think it's a halberd. Yeah, there we go. Halberd, exactly 500 points, dead on the character limit. So no triple save. You're not allowed that on a Chaos Lord on Dragon anymore. Then what else have we got? Off the table for the Dwarves, we've got 5 miners. The Cabbage Destruction Squad. And one of the Doomseekers failed the mercenary role, so is now also in ambush. And the Forces of Chaos also have, let me go back to the wide shot a second, not visible here, but there's a unit of 5 Marauder Horsemen who are hiding at the back there. You can't quite see them, you can just about see a couple of them poking out, guarding the cabbage at the back there. And I think that is the entire Chaos list. So, what is my plan? Because you can see we've got these 3 objectives in the middle that we're going to score from, and the cabbages are in play. The miners, they're really more of a threat to the cabbage, because there's no way in hell that 5 miners are ever going to be allowed to destroy a baggage train. Because any enemy unit that's perched there, when the miners come in, if that unit doesn't charge and wipe out the miners, then it's very surprising. Can we think of one unit in the game that those 5 miners would defeat when they get charged? Because they only have a 5-up save. Any unit that's guarding the cabbages whatsoever, I think, is almost guaranteed to charge in and defeat a unit of 5 miners. If anyone thinks differently, then let me know if you can think of anything in the game that's feeble enough to not defeat 5 miners in combat. So, and even if you're going for 10 miners, I still don't think that's going to be great, but what they're doing is they're forcing the enemy to put a unit at the back and just hang out there. So I don't know whether there is real value in it. The Unchosen Realms says skinks. Maybe a minimum size. What's the minimum sized unit of skinks you could take? Maybe they wouldn't like to fight miners. But if they were skirmishers, for example, they could spread out around the cabbage and mean that the miners can come in nowhere near it and then just run away, potentially. No, 10 skinks. I would actually prefer to be in the shoes of the 10 skinks rather than the miners. And the skinks probably would have ranged weaponry as well, so they'd be able to just shoot the miners to death instead. Giovanni says warhounds can be beaten. So we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. And is there another job for the miners? I don't think so, because they come in and then they're not very well protected, so they just die immediately. And if the cabbage was left unguarded, they would go and destroy it though. They'd go and pillage some serious cabbage. My plan, though, is for my rangers to shoot up the chosen knights and try and kill them with the crossbows, and I'm also going to put the handgun Thane in that unit as well to shoot them. And then my 2 fighter units are going to go and deal with the Chaos Warrior block, would be the dream. Maybe the Warp Fire Dragon. Hammerers wouldn't mind fighting anything over there particularly. They're drilled as well, so they could go wider if they want to get more in combat. The King is pretty tasty with toughness 10 and 5 attacks with the great weapon, so potentially scary. So I like this little block of doom I've got here. Hopefully the Rangers can hold up this flank for a bit. I don't know whether they would like to face the Knights and the Dragon at once, but hopefully if I can shoot down a few Knights before they get close, then they would be hesitant to double charge, because I could potentially wipe them out with more crossbow shots. Now I haven't gone very wide here and the unit's not very big, but they do have the Gun Thane of Doom about to join the unit as well. Doomseeker out here is just going to run straight towards the enemy, try and kill a few things and then die. And the ambush Doomseeker will see where everyone is when he comes on to decide what to do there. I'm going to be firing the Stupidity Gun at any of these units here just to stop them in their tracks and stop them doing anything significant. And that's the plan anyway. Into turn 1, and the Forces of Chaos are going first. You can see that the Forsaken are moving towards the Doomseeker, which is what I like to see. The Warpfire Dragon and the Chaos Warrior block with the Tzeentch Wizard are hanging out on this objective in the middle. They're a core unit, so they can score it. The Dragon moves up onto the hill next to the Gyrocopter. So, My situation here is, do I rotate? Do I reform the unit at all? Do I start taking shots into the knights? Or do I just allow the dragon to charge in the flank? And would that make a big difference if I do allow it to charge in the flank? It means I wouldn't be able to stand and shoot, but I'd be more likely to stand and shoot against knights anyway. And it does have a unit strength of 10, the Chaos Lord and Dragon still, so it's pretty scary still. You can see the Marauder Horseman there just hanging out on the cabbage. And Marauder Horseman with Flail would almost certainly annihilate a few miners. So a bit of an advance for the enemy, but not much else happens there. So you can see the Rangers, by the way, deployed close to this objective, so I can immediately start scoring it. So my opponent scores 60 points, I score 30 in round 1 there. And into my first turn, the Doomseeker charges in, kills a few Forsaken, and then gets killed. So he's done his job now. Whittled down that unit a bit and then died. So he's not giving away points by being alive. My Gyrocopters have just gone straight behind enemy lines as much as possible into a position where they can't be charged, and then they'll look for rear charges on units or look to get their flame templates in play at some point. The Rangers rotate a little bit so no one's going to get them in the flank. And then they open fire with the handgun and the crossbows into the chosen Chaos Knights, but the Chaos Knights make all of their saves. There's quite a few saves to make, but all of them successful. They do have good armour though, and you can see the Gyrocopters just hiding behind enemy lines there, and everyone else just moving up, angling themselves. So if anyone wants to charge into the Rangers, they're going to have to deal with the Hammerers as well, and these warriors put Stupidity onto the Warpfire Dragon. That's what that dice is representing there. So you can see that the Stupidity Gun of Doom, kaboom. The Warpfire Dragon is now going to be stupid, so we'll see if it passes the test next turn. Because if it doesn't, I'm also potentially inviting it to charge into the Rangers' flank, which you might think is wild because there's loads of other units that could hit them, but it would expose itself to being charged by the Hammerers then, which I am okay with. So, into the enemy turn, and you can see they did turn round after combat, by the way. That's what that updated picture was for, after fighting the Doomseeker. So, again, my opponent scores both of these because the Forsaken and the Chaos Warriors are on objectives. I'm just on this one. We've got a Dragon charge into the Rangers. We've got a Forsaken charge into the Gyrocopter, who's obviously going to flee. And flees all the way to the back there. The Knights also get in, and again, on the stand and shoot, they make all their saves again. And the Handgun Thane is not doing a great job, but they make a few saves this time. So on average, I was hoping that with my round of shooting, with the Gun Thane and the crossbows in the front rank, I would kill at least 1 or 2, and then another 1 or 2 on the stand and shoot. But, as it is, all of them make it into combat, so that's not a good sign. Gyrocopter running away. Warpfire Dragon fails its stupidity test and has to sit there like a chump. Hilariously. So this first time the stupidity cannon has actually caused an enemy unit to fail the stupidity test, by the way. Which is an amazing stat considering I've used it in quite a few games now. The wizard kills a hammerer with a magic missile. There we go. Hammerer corpse. In the challenge that we've got here, we've got the Ranger Champion and the Chosen Knight Champion. And you can see the Ranger Champion gets killed, and a few of the Rangers get killed. But they fall back in good order, and both units follow up, so the Hammerers can now charge. Now, this may be played incorrectly here. So, my understanding of charging in the flank or the front rules is that if it's the number of models that are in the facing, but if it splits a model in half, my understanding is that it used to be that meant that they count as the front, because if you can charge the front, you have to. There was something about that in the rules, but apparently that's gone. And now when you're charging, you can decide yourself if the models are split halfway which facing you go into. So I think this could actually be a flank charge now, but we don't play it as such because I wasn't aware of that particular update to the rules. So, it's just going to be played as a front charge, but if it was a flank, that would be very tasty indeed. So, more points scored for the enemy there. And into my turn. So, Gyrocopter fails to rally and runs off the table, which is quite funny. the miners have popped up and the Doomseeker, both the ambushers have come on at the same time. So I've decided, let's just go for the cabbage. If you go for the miners, then you're leaving the Doomseeker alone, who's going to be able to maybe attack something down there. If you go for the Doomseeker, the miners are going to gobble up that cabbage. And you can see that after combat, I lose a load more of the rangers. The hammerers don't do much because not many of them are actually in contact, but they do bring a lot of combat res, which keeps it reasonable. And they survive as a result of that. You can see that I also put the gyrocopter into the rear of the knights as well, but with all that I still only killed one knight, so pathetic. And with that the knights were able to turn round. I think all my units gave ground, so the dragon followed up into the rangers and the knights restrained and just spun round to look at the gyrocopter. So, had that been in the flank, obviously that would have been more attacks, but not that many more. And the way that the rolling has been going, I don't know whether that would have helped too much. Into the next turn for the enemy. So you can see that... Let's see. We're into the enemy turn, I think, now. Yep, I just didn't take a picture of the dice. So the knights chase the gyrocopter, who flees about 3 inches, and then gets caught and dies, which is sad. And I was thinking here, do I hold? Because that means the gyrocopter would be fought here and killed, but that would mean potentially the knights would stay in position for the hammerers to charge them afterwards, or if they want to overrun, they'd be facing this way, miles away. So I was in 2 minds about it, because if I flee, obviously, I was hoping that I would flee and they just wouldn't catch me, is the thing. I was hoping that they would flee, I would flee to about here, they would go to about there, and they'd just be stuck facing the wrong way. That was the plan, but they do actually catch the gyrocopter in a really annoying position because I can no longer charge them, so maybe I should just held the copter there. The Marauder Horsemen into the miners. I expect this to be short and bloody with miners all getting wiped out, but we'll see. Warpfire Dragon moves up and drops its template on the hammerers, and I think it just kills 1. The Marauders fail to kill all the miners. There's 2 left, and then I double won the leadership test. So the miners are actually fine for the time being. And the Handgun Thane of Doom, BSB, is dead. All the rangers are dead. And the dragon can now turn its attention to the hammerers. So I think there was just, there's 3 of them left actually there. So they fled through the hammerers, overrun into the hammerers. So what I possibly should have done is not gone for a challenge and intentionally got the whole unit wiped out so that the dragon couldn't overrun into the hammerers. Because it's only the fact that I fled that allowed the dragon to actually get in there. But it's not actually that bad because hammerers pretty tough guys and can swing their hammer with some force, so we'll see whether they can do anything to a dragon next. Not much is going on in the middle here. The enemy are happy to stand back, and my dwarf warriors are too slow to really threaten them. So more points being racked up for the enemy on the objectives, and I'm still stuck on just a few. Which dragon did you use for the Chaos Lord? Oh, this enemy Chaos Lord, this here. Are you talking about that one? Or are you talking about mine? Because my Chaos Lord, that obviously isn't in this game, is Egrim van Horstman. This, my opponent's converted Chaos Lord on Dragon. I believe it is the Age of Sigmar Ionis Cryptborn Dragon with different heads put on it and an evil chaosy dude on top. That is my suspicion. Okay, turn 3 for me. So, not much going on there. The Runesmith gets into a challenge, I think. Is it Runesmith? Let's have a look. Yes, because the champion already died in a challenge in the previous combat that I didn't mention. So it's only the Runesmith that's available now. So he barges his way down into the fighting rank and gets eaten, because the Hammerers can't issue challenges on behalf of a Runesmith because he's not a Lord or a Thane. So, spoiler alert, this unit in the tournament is going to be joined by Ungrim, But for this game, I had to whittle it down by 600 points, so Ungrim just dropped out. So this unit is obviously not as effective without Ungrim in there. Orlando says, got 2 times Dark Elf Lord dragons and building a 2-headed dragon for Chaos Lord. Very nice. Runesmith dead. Doomseeker just moves up, getting ready to charge next time. And the Rangers continue fleeing, as you can see there. And, well, what about this? The Miners, their finest hour. They kill a Marauder, they don't lose anyone, and they win the combat, and then chase about 3 inches so they don't quite catch them. And they don't have enough unit strength to now affect the cabbage at all. But they're chasing an enemy chaff unit down. Wild. So, I do score some points because I've got a core unit onto this objective now. It just walks right up there and waiting to be attacked. And turn 4 for Chaos. So we've got Warp Fire and the Chaos Lord on Dragon, both into the Hammerers at the same time, and I've got no one to issue or accept challenges now, so we'll see how much damage they can do and what I can whomp them back with. The Marauder Horsemen do rally, and the other Chaos units just move up. Now, the one weird thing about the infantry rules at the moment, you're really incentivized not to charge sometimes. If you're going against, for example, Dwarf infantry, if you make them charge you, then they lose a lot of benefits. They're only going to be able to attack with half of them for a start, if you let them charge you. It's even more pronounced with Hammerers, because if you charge them, they double their attack output for a start, and they get to attack with an extra rank as well, and they even get a bonus to their initiative when you charge them. So it's a really weird situation of infantry units looking at each other, not necessarily being sure if they want to be the one that charges. So maybe the rules have nudged it a bit too far in terms of infantry wanting to be charged. Maybe they should get some more benefit to charging as well, potentially. So, all the Hammerers get completely wiped out by the 2 dragons and the Stomps. Like, every single model is killed by 2 dragons. And that's very sad, and they turn around to stare at the warrior block. So obviously, in the tournament, when I've got Ungrim in there with the Hammerers, 2 dragons might be hesitant to charge in when Ungrim's around with his monster slaying abilities. And more scoring for Chaos. You can see that they're building up a decent lead there on objectives. Turn for me now. We've got, well, let's go back to the wide shot here. The Dwarf Warriors and the Doomseeker both charge into this unit. And as a result of that, they end up fleeing, but the Doomseeker should have caught them, but because he has to pursue them towards their centre, he crashes into this unit first. You can't choose to go at a different angle to avoid an intervening unit when pursuing, because otherwise the Doomseeker would have just caught and run down that unit hideously and just butchered them all. So the Doomseeker actually did most of the damage in combat there. He did really well. So he's overrun into the Forsaken, and the Dwarf Warriors with the King are just hanging out behind now because they can't catch. The Miners just move up a little bit towards the enemy because they fail their charge. And the Rangers do actually rally, do they? I might have just used the token for something else. I don't think they rally. So you can see that I lost the Stupidity Engineer and 1 Dwarf Warrior there. And a bit more scoring for the enemy. The cabbage train is charged by chosen knights. Well, I say charged, they just move into contact with it and then next turn they'll eat all the cabbages. And the Marauder Horsemen into the Miners. The 2 remaining Miners. You can see that they are still fleeing there. One of them gets shot down by a magic spell, I think one of the remaining Rangers. The Miners defeat the Marauder Horsemen in combat, and the Marauder Horsemen flee off the table. So this is the finest thing the Miners have ever done, and it required obscene against the odds rolling. But they've actually killed a unit. It's the first time Miners have killed anything for me. The Doomseeker does go down this turn. And the Forsaken overrun into the Dwarf Warriors, which hilariously means the King is now totally useless, because there's no one in there for a challenge, so he can't challenge anyone. And he's not touching, so he's barely going to get any attacks. So that's very sad. And into my turn 5. The Rangers are still running away. The Miners are just repositioning. The Dwarf Warriors end up... Let's have a look. Where were they? I think I beat the Forsaken in combat, but not much is accomplished either way, so they end up just giving ground a bit, I think. So, turn 6 for the enemy, because if you look at this, obviously I'm not going to win this game, because I'm not really going to kill anything, but this unit's done alright with the king in there. Cabbage is gone. The dragon chases down the remaining rangers, and they are now dead. And the Forsaken go back into the Dwarf Warriors. And it's a really bloody round of combat, actually, because the king is now getting all his attacks, and both sides lose a lot. The Forsaken get a lot of attacks, and it may well have even been a draw, potentially. Have they moved? Okay, I think I gave ground, so I lost combat by a small amount. Then in my turn, I managed to murder most of the Forsaken. Is that one left alive there? I think it fell back in good order through the Chaos Warriors. So that's hilarious that one is left alive. And that's it. So, Chosen Knight still alive, Warpfire Dragon, Dragon Lord, Blob of Chaos Warriors, Sorcerer, Miners still up. So I barely get any kill points, to be honest. And it's clearly not a win. And what did we learn from this? Dragons are still a menace. And hammerers without a character in there are not that amazing. So hopefully at the tournament, when Ungrim joins them, we'll be able to accomplish a bit more. What else comes into the list? A third gyrocopter comes in. Other things I tweaked, even though the miners had their finest hour in this game, I've taken them out of the list entirely for 2,600 point tournament. Because I decided that there's just nothing that they can compete with. And spending over 100 points on 10 miners is just a waste, because they'll get killed by anything that deemed them worthy to guard against. And I don't think anyone comes to a battle without at least one rubbish unit that can just guard cabbages from miners. And some units will just be camped around their cabbage entirely with like war machines and stuff, so the miners will be totally useless, because they'll pop up and then they'll be hit with like grape shot and die immediately. So I think miners are maybe the most pointless unit in the entire dwarf list. Let me know if you think there's one that's even worse than miners, but I think they are just terrible. I haven't tried... Let's have a look. I'm going to have a look at their entry on new recruit here and see if there's any way we can make miners useful. Let me pull them up here. Because obviously you can equip them with... Let's see... You can give them blasting charges, can't you? There we go. Let's have a look at the blasting charges. So, 6-inch range. So you're probably going to be able to use it on the turn you come on, but probably not with everybody. Because you have to be 8 inches away, and then you can do a move. So the chances of getting everyone into range to use it may be slim. It's strength 3, AP -1, armor bane 1, and they are ballistic skill 3. So that just sounds really feeble still. Giovanni says they're only really useful in the expedition list just because they can enter the battlefield near a token and not from the edges. If you enter in the middle of the battlefield, that is potentially good for blocking up enemy units, but is blocking up enemy units something dwarves even need to do? Because if you want to fight the enemy, then they just won't charge the miners, they'll just move away from them. And if you don't want to fight the enemy, then they can charge the miners and then swift stride overrun 1,000,000 inches and get to whatever was hiding behind them anyway. So you can maybe put them at a jaunty angle to prevent any kind of overrunning shenanigans. So maybe in the engineer's expedition list, using them to block the enemy, but the chances of them not identifying that as a possibility, and if they want to get past, them just putting something fast around the mine anyway, so that you can't physically position something to block them with. And there are a lot of units that fly that won't get blocked, obviously. A lot of units with drilled that could avoid a bit of blockage also as well. I don't know, I just don't see the value in miners, sadly. And the hammerers are going to have Ungrim in there. The warriors will probably often be joined by this king, who does make it into the tournament list. I've also taken out the 2 Doomseekers and just put in 1 heavily tooled up Doomseeker, because it feels like when they do get into combat, they need to have more punch. So I've just got 1 that's 150 points, because I've given it an extra attack. I've given it no armor saves allowed against its attacks, and I've given it, for every unsaved wound it causes, it gains an extra attack. So a Doomseeker that can just kill, horribly murder things like knights, or even Chaos Warriors, or anything juicy like that, or even a dragon wouldn't really want to tangle with that. You're not getting an armor save, and lots of attacks coming at you that always, at worst, are going to wound on 4s, because it's a Slayer. So Doomseeker potentially could be fun there, and if it gets shot down, it's not costing me anything anyway, victory point-wise. So we'll see if I can find a good place to hide a Doomseeker in ambush and then attack the enemy. And by ambush, I don't mean the ambush rule, I mean just hiding behind terrain. Other than that, I've also put an organ gun into the list for the 2,600 points. Also, Burlock Daminson comes in to join the Rangers to stop them taking a long-range shooting penalty, and the Rangers unit goes up to 27. So a bit of shooting there. We've got Burlock in case I want to leave it near the organ gun for a reroll, but it's really just there to give me a bit of long-range shooting, the old organ gun. So we'll see. This game, I don't think it's a true illustration of the army, because I think the army was taken out at the knees slightly with the reduction in points and some of the things that I chose to take out, particularly Ungrim, who is going to help the Hammerers. The Hammerers without a Lord or a Thane are not quite as spicy. They can't individually challenge out monsters one at a time, which is obviously what they would like to do. Won't be able to do that against Warpfire, obviously. I've also taken out the Engineer with the Stupidity handgun, because even though it worked on this game for one turn, that's the only time it's ever succeeded, and that guy's over 100 points. So if you're not taking loads of war machines, so you don't need to load up on engineers in the first place, then I don't see too much value in him. It's a fun gimmick, and against some armies it would be amazing, but most of the time I think it's pointless, and he's just too expensive for someone that does nothing. Which you could say about a lot of dwarf units, actually. There's a lot of options you have that are very expensive and do nothing. For example, cannons and all the runes you can put on them, so that they can fail to hurt things, and then fail to do any damage when they do hurt things. So it's a sad time still, but there is potential because we've got these new infantry rules. So we saw at the last event where I played the Dwarves that they killed Mao Ying, the Cathay Dragon, by running her down after winning with static combat resolution. So infantry, it's having a good time under the right conditions. I think though that my dwarf collection, in general, for these new rules, I think Longbeards are essential because they're a core unit, so they can score points, and they're also just way better than Dwarf Warriors at fighting. So I could take Longbeards, Warriors, and Rangers all as core units, and then be able to score on multiple objectives at the same time, and if one of them gets killed, I'm not stuck with nobody to score points. And the Longbeards are also just good. You can put characters in there with them. I think they're a strong unit. I don't particularly like the Anvil anymore, because on average it fails all its spells now with the changes, so I don't like that. Double Anvil would be more reliable, but that's obscenely expensive. And it's also just giving away points, because if you're taking a double anvil, you've not invested in that many points of units that are going to be able to protect it. So I think certain things are still a struggle for dwarves. We do benefit in the way of enemy units that we whittle down to just a couple of models and then they hide. We do score more points for those now under the new rules. So that's a benefit to dwarves, who are terrible at chasing things down. And we shall see how things go at the event. Day 1 is in the bag, but I'm not going to spoil how it goes. I can tell you which armies I face, actually. So, on day 1 of the tournament, I have played against Tomb Kings in game 1. I played Grand Cathay in game 2. And then Dark Elves in game 3. So, exciting times there. 3 very different armies. Prior to today, I can't even remember the last time I played against Tomb Kings. I might have played against them once or twice ever in Old World, which is weird because they are fairly well represented. Maybe just not in this area. What do we see most of around here? We see a lot of dwarves, we see a lot of Warriors of Chaos, and maybe we'll start seeing a lot of Cathay now. Let's see, Cathay's Nightmare if they got balloons. Well, the Cathay list at this tournament has 1 balloon, which is the very gentlemanly number of balloons to have, rather than 3, which I think is currently annihilating the meta worldwide. because they do have all the special rules in the world. It would be quicker for your opponent to tell you which special rules the balloons do not have. It's a very long list of rules they have. So there has been talk, actually, at events, maybe limiting the number of balloons to 2, which some people who have immediately gone out and bought 3 maybe wouldn't be happy about. Actually, one thing, I'll sneak it in now, but we're going to have more of a discussion on balloons tomorrow. I think the design of the balloons is weird when you compare it to the Sentinels, the Cathay Giants, because what they've done, they've given you like 4 different variants of the Sentinel that all look the same, and they all have a different special rule, but they've only given you like 1 balloon variant, and then 1 you can upgrade with a character. But it has a million special rules. So I don't see why they didn't give you like 3 different kinds of balloon and then spread out the special rules among them. So you've got like the scouting balloon that has all the movement shenanigans. You've got the bombing balloon that has all the bombing shenanigans. Like the gun balloon that has the gun shenanigans. And the scout balloon with the movement would also be the one that like artillery spots. And it's just weird. They've crammed all those rules that should have been different unit types all into one profile. So it's very odd. But you'll see how that goes tomorrow anyway. Only facing 1 balloon, so maybe I've got a chance. You'll find out. And then tomorrow at the event, I think the pairings for the next round are already up, so I can tell you how I'm going to be facing actually. Let me pull that up now. So you'll have even more of a spoiler alert. But obviously, I've not told you any of the results. I'm going to be facing Warriors of Chaos tomorrow. So there you go. Oh, let me have a quick look now. Preview if there's any dragons in here. No hero dragons, but there is a warp fire dragon. There you go. So 1 dragon in that list. I'll be facing that tomorrow morning. Optimus says balloons OP, although I saw an orc and goblin army win by stretching out a huge line of gobbos so he could direct the fanatics wherever the balloons were. Well, there will be really stupid things that the rules allow that can stop other stupid things. One thing I was thinking about actually with cabbages is taking a massive unit of like 40 miners, ambushing them onto the table in marching column so they stretch like the entire way almost across the table. Maybe not quite that far, but halfway across the table, and like just poke a cabbage that way. It would be dumb and it would look stupid, but I think the rules technically allow it for you to enter the table in marching column. And if there's 40 in the unit, how about that? I don't know how expensive that unit would be though. Maybe you can't have that many. Obviously you're limited with the point value of a particular unit. Okay, so until maybe tomorrow evening there'll be a report on the tournament. It depends how tired I am. It'll either be tomorrow or Monday evening. And then you'll get 5 red hot, juicy, succulent games of Dwarven action, 2,600 points, featuring Ungrim and a heavily tooled up Doomseeker. Very exciting times. And then, other than that, if you want a sneak preview of what else is coming up, let me have a quick look at my tournament calendar here before I disappear. So, after this one, what do we have next? Well, the next one that will be covered on this channel, I believe, is going to be the Clash of Kings, which is Kings of War, the biggest tournament of the year. Over 200 players playing Kings of War. And yeah, that's the next juicy one. That's in September. Mid-September. So you can look forward to that if you're a fan at all of Kings of War. The next Old World event after the one that I'll be reporting on tomorrow looks like... Let's see, there might be another one earlier, but I've got one here for early October marked down. There will be battle reports in the meantime as well. I'm also going to try and get some more Chaos Warriors painted soon. Might try and do some more Chaos Knights, because that way I feel like I could actually compete with the current scoring system. Because I don't think my current build of Chaos Warriors can really compete, because I just don't have enough units. Enough scoring units as well. Alright, time to wrap this one up, so thanks for tuning in everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and if you want to see more battle reports, tournament reports, and if you want me to spend more money on old school dwarves, then why not pledge your entire life savings in the Patreon or the PayPal. Speaking of which, actually, speaking of me spending money, I do currently have a source on buying some classic Longbeards, enough to make a full unit, and the old Throne of Power, the old small metal one that fits onto a Lord on Shield Bearer's base. So I'm going to try and raise some funds to buy those, because they're not going to be cheap. So I may sell some stuff on eBay, but obviously anything that drops into the funding sources in the description would go straight into that fund pot as well, if that's something you want to see. So we'll see whether I can win some games this weekend with the Dwarves against the balloon meta. And all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.